Some 20 years ago, a researcher named Robert Putnam conducted a landmark study on our society that came to be known as bowling alone. In that study, Putnam found that Americans had been withdrawing from their communities since the 1960s and 1970s, and that trend was accelerating. He found that attendance in public meetings had been dropping, that religious affiliation was declining, and that even the family dinner was becoming an endangered species. But his most memorable example was that more and more Americans were bowling. More Americans were bowling than ever before. But they were not bowling in leagues or in organized groups. They were bowling alone. Similarly, more people were listening to music than ever, but they were listening alone. We see this today, don't we? We could add that people are listening to podcasts more than ever, watching videos more than ever, that they are playing games more than ever, but they're all doing it alone. We can feel that trend has been increasing exponentially even within the last decade. You see, technology makes our lives more convenient, but it also tends to split us apart. Today, it is just as easy to work from home in most cases as it is to work in an office. Many people go through their workday and have no face-to-face communication at all. Rather, they're communicating with people online. Now, it's true that in some ways technology connects us, but it's a different kind of experience, isn't it? You know, today, because of the internet and social media and our laptops and our smartphones and our tablets, we can catch up with old classmates and long-lost family members, friends and acquaintances across the country and around the world. But those connections are fleeting, and often they are superficial. They don't really satisfy our souls. They don't meet our deeper need for authentic human connection. So all of these trends have been building for decades now, with societal trends and technology sort of moving us more and more into this phase of aloneness, such that today is called the age of loneliness, where we are more and more isolated from one another. And then comes the pandemic, right? It made everything so much worse. Because the pandemic, particularly the lockdown, really forced us into isolation. Oof, it was an awful time, wasn't it? You just sort of shake your head at what we've been through. It's really kind of incredible. We had to learn how to be alone. But today, as the pandemic begins to lift, I sometimes wonder, do we remember how to be together? Clearly today in this room we do. But in the overall scheme of things, do we as a society really remember how to be together and even facilitate and support and create ways for that to happen? I know I'm not the only one who felt a little bit socially awkward coming back from the pandemic in interacting with people face to face again. It felt a little strange, didn't it, when you haven't done that in a while? And to this day, there are still folks who are kind of in that hunker down mode, that are still staying home, even aside from precautions around COVID. And I know that it's not over. I certainly we all honor and respect those who need to stay home and away from people to take care of their own health. But there's something else going on too, even beyond that, where people are just sort of choosing to be homebodies, to stay home, even if that means being alone. It seems that living in sweatpants has become its own sort of art form. And it seems harmless enough. It seems harmless enough, doesn't it? But living in isolation over time is very dangerous to our health, to our physical health, and to our mental health. Researchers say that these statistics are amazing. Researchers say that social isolation is as likely to cause early death as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That loneliness is twice as deadly as obesity. It increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, high blood pressure, depression, paranoia, anxiety, alcoholism, and suicide. People who are lonely or socially isolated have a 29% higher risk of a heart attack, angina, or death from heart disease, and a 32% higher risk of a stroke. Isolated people are also less likely to exercise and stick to their medicine regimen, and they're more likely to smoke and drink too much. A lot of those are the physical health impacts of being isolated and being alone or separate from one another. But as we have clearly seen from the pandemic, isolation also takes a toll on our mental health. We all felt that, didn't we? And maybe are still feeling it. I know a lot of folks are still struggling to recover from what we've been through these past 2 years. They've been hard on all of us. But friends, they've been particularly hard on our young people. American teenagers were already suffering from mental distress before the pandemic hit for a variety of reasons. Bullying, social media, which can be brutal on their self-esteem, on their confidence, not enough sleep, a sense of not knowing where they fit in. All of these things were at work in this fast-changing society of ours. And then the pandemic comes along, and with the loss of school and social activities, that already bad situation became much worse. So much so that this last December, the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, issued a rare public advisory warning of a quote-unquote devastating mental health crisis among adolescents. And that crisis crosses over all racial and ethnic groups, urban and rural areas, and all socioeconomic classes. Today, the rates of mental health disorders among youth are soaring. They include anxiety, depression, compulsive behaviors, self-harm, and tragically, suicide. It truly is a crisis. It's a crisis. Our young people need us. Somehow, we must help them and help ourselves rediscover meaningful human connection. We must shift this trend from being alone and isolated to being together. We must come back to that sense, that richness of human connection that makes all the difference in our lives and our well-being. Well, interestingly, throughout history, societies have been able to make just this same kind of shift from an individual orientation to a collective orientation, from a we focus to a we focus. And they've done it to adapt to changing conditions. So there's a beautiful model that shows this so perfectly, and it's called spiral dynamics. How many of you have heard of spiral dynamics? It's been a while since I've talked about it here. Spiral dynamics is basically a framework for understanding the evolution of human consciousness. And it assigns different colors to various worldviews, different ways of seeing the world, different perspectives, different ways of behaving, kind of your perspective, if you will. So this is really what and they call each of those colors a meme, M-E-M-E. So this, as I'm sure you can perfectly understand, shows the different memes going back 100,000 years. So these are the different sort of mental frameworks that humanity has progressed through over time. So at the bottom is the beige level, and beige is really tribalism, right? And then it sort of moved into the purple phase, which was magical thinking, then over to the red phase, which is all about power and authority, kind of impulsive, egocentric. Then from there, and you can sort of see how one would have shifted into the other based on the conditions or what was coming about because of it. So it went from that sort of ego-focused red over to blue, which is all about hierarchy and rules and order, that kind of thing. Then from there back over to orange. And orange is actually more what the Fillmores were. Orange has been very popular, for example, in the 70s. It's about science, it's about bettering yourself, it's about personal human achievement. You can do whatever you set your mind to, that kind of thing. And then over into the green, and the green is more humanistic and egalitarian. It is often said that unity is a green consciousness movement because we are so embracing of equality and diversity, care for the earth, helping one another, etc. There are two above that, the yellow and the turquoise. The yellow is integrative, the turquoise is holistic. But these belong in sort of a different category, which I'm going to address in just a moment. So important to realize, it's not like we all move as a group, like, okay, we're all going to be in this consciousness. Now we're going to move into this one. Everybody ready? It would be kind of nice if it was that way. It is not that way. As you can readily see, all of these worldviews still exist in our world and certainly in our country. But what happens is that the balance begins to shift sort of upward, right? So we can certainly identify people who are in the red mentality of conqueror. Certain people come to mind when we think about that on the other side of the world right now. So they still exist, but the balance begins to shift. So here in the United States right now, the majority are in orange and in green, moving increasingly into green, which is kind of an exciting thing, right? We're kind of moving into that more egalitarian, open-minded thing. But here's the part that I find particularly relevant about this model today. That at each of those levels, underlying this whole pendulum, it swings from a me focus to a we focus, from one level to the next. So for example, that tribal was very the warrior, trying to survive, right? And then it went to magical thinking and the community, and then it came back to the red, the individual, and then back over to blue, institutional, and then to orange, individual, and now to green, which is more a we focus. Which tells us that we are in this process of moving into a more kind of communal mindset, a more communal framework, which explains some of the struggle that we're in right now. But here's the very best part about spiral dynamics, and it has to do with those top two. Wait, got something going on here, 1 second. Apologies. Those top two levels are part of a different tier. So there's actually a little bit of a gap between the green and the yellow. And it's a really significant gap because that tier 2 consciousness is a whole other level. So these tiers are very different. These bottom ones are all tier 1. And at tier 1, here are some of the characteristics. They're based on fear. At tier 1, each meme thinks that it's right and the others are wrong. Even the green. We're right, and the others are wrong. Which explains some of the combativeness, does it not? And the divisiveness. No, we have to win out because our way is right. All that is happening at tier 1. But when you get to tier 2, it's based on love. Tier 2 doesn't say that any one point of view is correct or right or the best, but that all of them, it embraces all of them for the good that they have, the value that they offer or have offered in the past. So that there's a way to take the best from each of these ways of thinking and integrate it into the whole. So at tier 2, it is based on this ethic of transcend and include. Transcend and include. It is unitive consciousness. It is oneness consciousness. It is what we here in unity call Christ consciousness. That kind of consciousness that says there is room for us all, there is value in every viewpoint. So now we understand, if we realize it takes a momentous leap to get from tier 1 to tier 2, things begin to make sense about why we're in such struggle right now, do they not? Because here we are, we're like on the verge of this big leap forward. We're trying to figure out how to let go of old patterns, how to heal, how to unite, how to shift our consciousness so that we are ready for a higher level of being. This is big work. Whew. Right? No wonder we're working so hard at it. No wonder we're putting so much energy into our breaking free of the ego, and what we're learning in Christopher's class and what Cheryl taught at her workshop yesterday. We're just trying to adjust to a higher level of consciousness that we know will set us free. Well, you may be thinking that is all fine and good, but what about right now? What about the problems that are before us right now? What about the ways in which we feel isolated or alone? What about our young people? Well, interestingly, those researchers that did the Bowling Alone report offered 2 key ways in which Americans can sort of revitalize our socialization, if you will, to sort of bring our society back into a more vital state. And the first one was for adults to socialize more, to join groups, and to volunteer. And the second was to show our young people ways to meaningfully socially connect. In other words, demonstrate for them, give them opportunities to connect with others face to face in a heartfelt way, in a meaningful way, on those things that matter the most to them. So help ourselves and help our young people. And by helping ourselves, we do help our young people, but we also need to be mindful of their special needs. I have to tell you, when I hear these recommendations, they remind me of what we do at Unity Renaissance. They remind me of why we're here. You know, just on that first one about having opportunities to join groups or to volunteer or to serve or to connect, my goodness. This is not a commercial for us. I know it sounds that way, but I couldn't help thinking of it. You know, honestly, folks, if I didn't have Unity Renaissance, I don't know where I would find community, real community, right? So here, and you can pick and choose. You can do as little or as much as you want. So many things going on, so many ways to connect with other people, to meet people whose background or perspective is perhaps different from your own, but to do so in a respectful environment, ways to serve, ways to get support and to give support. It's beautiful. We have things here from yoga to Tai Chi classes, to the men's group, to the sisterhood, the beautiful, beautiful Unity Sisterhood, incredible group of women. We've got cooking team, we've got movie night, can help in the classroom, and on, and that doesn't even mention the things that you want to do in your own heart that you want to bring into our organization. It's all here for you. And we also offer opportunities, thank God, so well and so beautifully for our young people. How many of you in this room have worked with our young people here at Unity Renaissance? You know what I'm talking about. And you know, I'm really appreciating the fact that today, in fact, this whole weekend, our Youth of Unity and some recent grads are at their spring regional retreat. There they are, getting ready to go. You know, you hear about these rallies, and you may not really have a sense of what goes on there. I've been to them. I don't go to all of them, obviously, but I've been. They're miraculous. One of the first things the sponsors do is take the kids' phones so that they are going to engage in meaningful interaction and communication with one another, and they provide this safe, supportive environment where those kids can share what they're being burdened by. They can open up. They can share what's worrying them, what's weighing on them. They can get support. They can share their fear. They can share their joy. For many of these kids, it is life-changing. It is life-changing. So important. And the end of next May, or the end of this month, our Uniteens will be going on a retreat. It'll be a very similar experience for them as well. And guess what? You have all helped make that possible through your contributions here and to our young people. All those auctions, all those bake sales and car washes, you've helped make that happen for them. And you know what? I know we can do even more. And with your help and your involvement and your inspiration, we will. And beyond that, here on Sundays, we serve our young people. Isn't it so incredibly inspiring when they come up here at the end of the service, the wise and beautiful things they say? From a very young age, they are learning that they are loved and accepted exactly as they are. And they're learning to love and accept others that same way. If you want to make a difference in a child's life, one of the ways you can do it is by helping in our youth ed department, where we very much need more teachers and classroom assistants. So see me or Lisa or B about that. You know, the truth is that as social beings, we humans need to have meaningful, deep connection. We need to feel a sense that we belong. And we need to have a feeling of being supported socially. And so today, very pointedly, I am inviting and I am encouraging you to take whatever steps you can to re-engage with community, with life, with your neighbors, with friends, whatever it may be. Take it at your own pace, but connect. Connect. As the author E.M. Forster said in the 20th century, only connect, but in a real way, in a human, face-to-face, personal way. And there's one more way you can do this, and this one is to those of you who are watching online. Come to church. Come to church. I know some of you can't, and thankfully we now reach to areas that people can't get here, but some of you can too. And every single week I hear someone say that the experience of being here in person is exponentially different than watching online. It's absolutely true. I know that to be true. There is a loving community here for you. So step back in, put a toe in the water. Put a toe in the water, maybe put on some nicer pants. But you don't have to. You can come in your sweatpants. It's all good. It's all good. You know, it says in Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. So let us affirm that this season of alienation and isolation and aloneness and loneliness is passing away, and the pendulum is swinging to a new season of meaningful, uplifting, progressive connection. Let us see that. Let us hold that in our hearts and be a part of that. Let us welcome the dawn of a new era and do our part to bring it forth. Let's move now into our meditation. So did I. Let's take a moment to breathe in. Just letting go into this beautiful sacred energy here in this sanctuary and feeling that connection with those who are watching online. We are one. We are one. Take a deep breath in. Let it go. Appreciating for a moment that there are those times in life when we feel alone and afraid, when our burdens feel heavy. We know for our young people it can be overwhelming. But today we remind ourselves that there's another way, that there's a choice that we can make. That loving souls, like-minded individuals, peers, coaches, and supporters are waiting for us to reach out. That power is within us to engage and to connect. Breathe for a moment into this beautiful, supportive energy. This healing vibration that we feel when we're together. And for a few moments in the silence, consider what is yours to do next. To connect, to engage, and perhaps to help someone else in that same way. Consider that for a moment in the silence. take a moment to just breathe a prayer of gratitude for all the good people in our lives, for this inward pull into a greater sense of we-ness and togetherness, knowing that we will honor that and all will unfold in a healing, uniting way. We're grateful for Unity Renaissance, for all those associated with it, for what we have created together and what we are creating going forward. For all of this and for the knowing that God's in charge and all is well, we are grateful. Thank you, sweet Spirit. So it is. Amen.
Flow, Spirit, flow through me as I open up to be an expression of your unfolding peace. Show, Spirit, show through me as I open up to be an expression of your unfolding love.
Thank you for you. Thank you for you. All right. Well, this is time in our service for the sharing of our love offering in support of Unity Renaissance. There are many ways to make a contribution to this community. You can find them all online and on our app. You can give via check or cash if you're here in the room and you'd like to do that. There's a love offering basket in the back. You can also give via credit card